Okay, so thank you to Dominic. As he said, my name is Carl Olivier. I look after Programmable Chat from a product perspective, based out of the UK. And the title of my talk, The Multiplicity of Chat, of Programmable Chat, is really aimed at highlighting how chat is capable to be used for multiple use cases, right? And very much the use case determines how you should approach using chat. Chat is not just for one use case. But of course, chat is chat, right? I mean, that's what I'm hearing you ask yourselves. I mean, isn't chat just chat? Well, the answer is really very simple. No. Chat isn't just chat. There are many different ways in which chat can be used and therefore implemented. Programmable chat as a product is as unopinionated as possible. The idea behind the product is that it provides you with different options and different APIs and SDKs for how you need to implement chat to support your requirements and your use cases. One of the things that I hear most from customers using chat, and especially as they're starting out, is, well, I'm not sure where to implement this. I'm not sure where this particular feature should be built and where they should be allowed to be built from. Should be from the client or my backend, etc. So there are many different forms of chat, right, which helps you inform how to use the product, right? You've got social chat between sets of connected users, such as in organizations or teams and colleagues. There are very many contextual chat implementations. About contextual, I'm talking about customer support, where the chat session is really linked to something external to chat itself. And chat is really just there as a vehicle to facilitate that communication. Buyer-seller interactions, think about marketplaces, etc. The way that chat is implemented is fairly different from the way that you would approach it for a social chat implementation. And there are a myriad of different implementations and different variations of all of these that are very different and very specific to a particular use case, particular business, or a particular need. So what are the things that might be different as you think about implementing chat, right? So there's a lot of complexity as you think about chat. Think about user permissions, think about who controls the chat, about who's allowed to speak to whom. Do chats last forever? I mean, chats can persist. They can stay in the system for as long as you need them to. But the question really exists, should that chat session and the messages and the membership of the users to that particular chat channel, should that persist for a very lengthy period of time? Your business logic, chat is not there to just be chat. It's there to provide a very specific function for your use case, to facilitate some need, right? To provide a communication channel in-app between your agents and your customers, between your users, between your employees, etc., right? So how much control does your business logic need? And does it need that upfront from a provisioning perspective? Or should it only be in real time, or maybe a mixture of both, reacting to actual events such as the creation of channels, certain messages being sent, etc.? All of these questions are very important as you're approaching implementing chat. So there's a lot of questions, a multitude of them, in fact. So something I wanted to quickly talk about before we dive into a little bit more of the details is just to take a quick step back and think about what does programmable chat provide you in terms of tools. I'm not going to deep dive into all the features here. We have that documented extensively on the website, and you feel free to please visit us at the product booth upstairs, where we can talk about and answer any questions you have about features, upcoming features, existing capabilities, and more. But I wanted to quickly just highlight the fact that chat supports two main interactions. One, from the first-person perspective. This is building out applications for mobiles on websites that are very first-person or user-centric. That's where a user logs into a system that has access to chat and interacts with that system from the perspective of that user, right? We then have the REST API. This is for system-level access. This is where your business logic controls chat. It's going to come in and create channels. It's going to add members, remove them. It's going to delete them, etc. Right? It controls that, and that is from a system perspective. It's not on behalf of any particular user. It's carte blanche, right? And then thirdly, I wanted to call out webhooks and webhook events. Now, this is pretty common to almost every Twilio product, in that we provide real-time context via webhook events to your backend, so that it can be in the loop of any events that happen, chats performed by your customers from their endpoints, and then trigger certain business logic, override certain actions, etc. Be in the loop, have all the context. And that's where the real power comes from. So I just wanted to talk about that. Our first-person interfaces that we support today on the SDK side is JavaScript for web and often desktop applications. And then we have native Android and iOS interfaces. And then obviously the rest over HTTPS. This is currently exposed by all 6 of our helper libraries. So interacting with the REST API is very simple, okay? So bearing that all in mind, let's talk about I'm going to dig into two use cases to some extent, right? These are different, and they have different properties and how you approach that, how you would slave chat, orchestrate chat, and use chat to support chat in the context of those use cases. I'll also talk about some additional capabilities that we offer, such as the webhooks, and how those can potentially help your business no matter your use case. So the two that I'm going to dig into from a use case perspective is customer support. This is really the classic customer support use case where a user is asking for help from a company through a medium, and the medium that they're interested in is chat. Now, we all are aware that you can phone in, you can have video, you can use SMS. Chat is becoming an incredibly popular customer support channel. It is highly efficient. Agents that are highly proficient can potentially support more than one chat at the same time. It also is a lower barrier to friction. Customers are very comfortable opening a chat rather than having to phone and talk to someone. They can do it while they're doing something else. It's asynchronous, and there's a very clear record of the communication between you and the agent, the customer and the agent. So that's one of the use cases I'm going to talk about and how you would use our programmable chat product to support that exactly to your needs, right, and integrate it tightly into your flows. The other one that I'm going to dig into is team chat, right? This could also be social chat, where there's a group of users that are able to talk to each other over chat on a very ad hoc basis. So think about Slack use cases and things like that. How would you use programmable chat to build that kind of feature into your service to allow your employees to chat with each other in an ad hoc fashion, cross-platform? And then real-time orchestration. So this is around the webhooks. Imagine your backend wants to know whenever a channel is created because it needs to kick off another process to record that or mirror the data or put some attributes, some metadata into the channel via the REST API. You want that to be real-time, and the webhook events that Programmable Chat allow you to specify are the means for you to be able to get that real-time out of the user land, where your users are interacting with the system, to your backend and your business logic. Right, so having thought about that, let's go through customer support in a little bit more detail. So I'm not going to deep dive into the low level here. I'm going to come at this from a somewhat macro and how you approach it. If you have questions on any of this, please do find me after the chat, after the session, as we're not going to take questions during the session. So some of the specifics about this use case, right? Customer support is the thing that you want to do, not chat. Chat is a means to an end. It is a fulfillment vehicle for the actual communication between a customer and an agent, right? It should only be in place once the need for that the support has been ascertained and once an agent has been assigned to that particular case, right? This gives context. What is the support chat about? Who are you talking to? What's the agent? Who's the customer? Can you go fetch other information to load to the agent's screen from your CRM about that customer? What products they have, where they live, previous interactions, et cetera, right? So essentially what you should not be doing is coming in and saying a support ticket should immediately create a chat channel, because that's not the point. The chat channel is there to support the ticketing system, right? So generally there's a support system that sits outside of chat, which is used to facilitate, I need help, please. Right, we'll match you to this agent because you're interested in mortgage assistance. And at that point, once we've matched an agent and assigned an agent to a support chat, the system that actually does that will go in via the REST API on the programmable chat side, create a channel, a private one, add the two, agent and customer, to the channel, et cetera, and allow the support chat to go. So that's quite important, right? Like that orchestration of chat is not the thing that's actually doing the ticketing system. It's something that happens after the fact. Something that's also very important here is the longevity of the chat, the actual channels themselves. Now, chat, in our terminology, a channel is a chat room. Members or users become members of channels or chat rooms, and messages are sent to channels and then distributed to members, right? So that's just something to bear in mind. So in the customer support use case, the best practice that we've seen and that we've seen successfully implemented by customers is that the chats are not long-lived, right? Remember, they're only there to support a particular engagement, which is that request for assistance, that assistance from an agent to a customer. Once that's finished, the need for that particular channel in active state in the actual chat system goes away. However, you should probably get a transcript out and store it in your CRM, because that's where that particular piece of data lives, right, and where it belongs. Right, so with that in mind, we'll think about, this is a very high-level flow. It's not a full-on flow diagram, but essentially a customer, either on a website or via the mobile application where you want to support the ability to say, I need help, asks for support. The support system does the hard work, after it actually assigns the agent to the customer ticket, creates the channel, adds the agent user and the client user to that channel. Now, the thing that's important here is that both the agent and the customer experience will have the chat SDK initialized and listening for certain events, such as being added to a channel. And then that UI will react to that event, right? So it doesn't pre-populate. And the system will say, here's, for this particular support request, here's the channel you should join, and the event will come through, and the UI can react accordingly. So add both of those, and it can even send an initial message from the system or from the agent saying, hi, I'm Bob, can I help you? Or something like that. Once that's happened, the agent and the user can chat. They have their interaction. You solve the problem on the mortgage, answer the questions about what the process might look like, etc. And once the chat is finished, and this, by the way, can be determined in a number of ways, and that's entirely up to you. So the user can have a button saying, I'm done, end my chat, please. You can do a transcription. You can email them a transcript. All that kind of process can kick off. Or it could be that the customer just disconnected and there's a timeout event that you have about the customer's gone, that endpoint's just disappeared. At some timeout, let's clean this up. But essentially, that's what happens last, right? You store the transcript, so from the REST API, your backend knows that the ticket has now been closed. It removes the two agent and customer from the chat, so their UIs disappear. They're no longer able to chat with each other. Note that none of that logic about removing themselves from a channel, creating the channel, exists on the client side. None of it, right? It's all orchestrated from the back end, based on the context of the ticket, the support ticket. You store that transcript in your CRM because you want records of that. You want the next time you go look up that user in your CRM, you want to actually see that they spoke to a support agent on such a date, and here's the transcript. That's important information. And at that point, you delete the channel. I hope that makes sense, but that's in the context of customer support at a very high level. Obviously, there's a lot of detail that goes into that we can dig into, and like I said, please find us at this booth and we can talk about it. Just to dig into a little bit more on why we're going to remove that channel, right? At the end of the day, chat is not the support system, right? So the history of that particular, the customer relationship or the customer communication belongs in a CRM somewhere, right? Leaving that channel in the chat system after the session, specifically the memberships to channel, can actually become quite costly over time. The clients, which is the SDK endpoints that come up, for agents, imagine agents deal with numerous chat support tickets daily. So if you don't remove them and clear that membership up, they're just suddenly going to be joined to, over time, thousands of channels in your chat system, which is wasteful. They're not needed, right? That's no longer needed. That customer's not there to talk to. And you shouldn't just join them to those indefinitely, right? And CRM systems are really the place, as I've said a number of times, where that transcript and that history of that interaction should live. So that's just a bit more about why we recommend removing that channel from there. I wanted to quickly call out marketplaces, which is another very popular use case for chat. Think about marketplaces as buyer-seller interactions, where a system matches a buyer and a seller of either goods or a service, and wants to provide a communication channel between those two for the duration of that particular interaction or transaction, right? And keeping that in-app or in-service is highly valuable, okay? This is incredibly similar to support chat. There's something that determines the channels needed, that you add the two, and at the end of the interaction, you would remove it. The main difference that we've seen is that for marketplaces, that transaction can generally be longer lived. A support chat could be 20 minutes, an hour. These can last for weeks or days, for example. And that's really the big difference is at the end of that transaction, clean it up. Get rid of that channel, get rid of the membership. It's no longer needed. It's probably going to be there longer than the support chat case, though. Right. Now that I've talked about the support chat case, let's talk about something completely juxtapositioned, which is team chat or social chat, right? This particular use case is really around a group of people or a group of users that are able to chat in an ad hoc fashion, either one-to-one or in small groups with each other, right? So they've got permission, they're part of the same group, organization, social group, media, whatever it might be. In this case, channels and messages are often long-lived. I mean, think about some of your Slack or Skype channels. They've been there for years, right? You don't want to get rid of those. Those are important things to you. If you really don't need them, you can go and delete them and clean them up. Permissions and rules do exist about what a user can and cannot do, and Programmable Chat has an extensible permissions and roles model, which says this particular user can create channels, this particular user can delete channels, this one can't. This is what this user can do in the context of this channel, right? Think about channel admins being able to add other people or kick them or change their roles. But But a large amount of the logic is actually on the client, right? So built into the interface that the user interacts with. And this is very different, if you think about it, to the customer support chat, which is where there's a lot of orchestration from a back end in the context of a very specific interaction that chat supports, okay? Provisioning is something that would generally be happening from a back end. So imagine you have a group of users, which is your organizational structure. You might want to pre-provision those people into our chat layer and provide them with a role that determines what they can and cannot do within the chat context and the chat system. Right, so thinking about that use case at a very high level, again, and once again, there are many flows. This is just one. Imagine that I want to now talk to a number of my colleagues, so I select them from a list. I then decide to create a channel. And I make that a private channel. Our chat supports private and public channels. The difference is really that private channels cannot be discovered unless you're added by either the system, so your business logic, or by a user with the correct permissions, right? After the channel is created, the user selects from a list within his application who the members, so other users that he wants to chat to, and adds them. The system will then send that event to any clients for the users that have just been added, telling them they've just been added to a new channel. And then the UI can react. The user can opt to go and respond to that. We even have push messages, that integration with push notifications over iOS, so APNS, as well as to Android devices, that you can opt to have that notification sent out. If they're not connected, the next time they come online, their list of channels will have grown by one, and they can jump into it. And at that point, messages flows. So those users can now chat with each other. I want to just call out that you'll see there's no backend involved here, right? No backend, that's not chat. So there's no business logic on the developer side. This is all pre-provisioned, pre-built into the application, predefined into the roles and permissions, right? So quite a different approach in how you implement that. Right, so one thing I wanted to quickly call out is, we talked about a user says, I'm going to go fetch these 3 users and actually start talking to them. Chat is generally not going to be the source of that user list or the users that exist in a system, because we do not understand what your relationship graph looks like, right? Chat as a product is unopinionated about that, and that's generally up to your backend to say, here are the groups of users that are allowed to talk to each other, right? It's about a relationship graph, a contact list, a set of users. Maybe that comes from your AD in backend, and maybe it comes from some custom logic. But chat generally knows about chat. And the only place that we can infer the right to see each other in the chat system is through shared channel membership, okay? So I just wanted to call that out as something fairly important. Okay, so hopefully that gives you some view of, and by no means are these the only 2 use cases we see. We see multiple use cases and variations of these use cases. There's distance learning, mentoring. All of these things have different levels of orchestration and provisioning from a back end, different levels of control that needs to be built into the client or not, et cetera. So hopefully that gives you a view of what 2 different ones might look like. But happy to talk through that if you need to. Just come find me afterwards. The next one I wanted to talk about is real-time orchestration, right? So one of the things to think about the team chat. Once you've deployed that, you provisioned that, your backend isn't involved, right? Suddenly you've just given all this power to chat to your customers. But what happens if your use case requires profanity filtering or checking up, creating calendar events or something like that based on actions or specific messages inside chat that's initiated from the client side, right? Now your backend needs to be pulled into that in context in real time. And the way we provide that, as with many products, is through real-time webhooks and events. Now, chat provides a myriad of different events. We do not opt these, we don't enable these by default, so you can go into a service instance, which is a chat deployment instance, and enable these as you need. And that will then tell us which endpoint, and we will fire, as those events happen, we will send those events to your backend to the endpoint specified. Now, something that's interesting is that we have 2 types of webhooks. Pre, or what we think of as synchronous, and post, or asynchronous webhooks. Now, the pre or synchronous webhooks, we will actually wait for a response from your backend before we actually process that event. So if someone says send a message and you've set up a synchronous on-message send event, we won't do that. We will not actually add it to the channel. We won't distribute that. It'll just not happen unless you say we're allowed to. So you say, yes, cool, go ahead. You can also say, no, don't go ahead, in which case we'll just respond back to the initiating client, sorry, that was denied, permission denied. And you would programmatically handle that in your application code. The other thing you can do is you can also change it. So depending on what type of event it is, your response can reply with a modification that you'd like us to apply to that particular message as we process it. So if you want to redact profanities, you want to add some additional metadata, you want to put some attributes into the message. So we have extensible metadata attributes where you can just put whatever you like in JSON form. That you can do in the response to a pre-webhook. The asynchronous ones are there as after the event. Once we've actually processed it, we'll tell your backend if you prefer to do that. The difference is that the asynchronous ones have the SIDs, right? So the message SID, the channel SID, et cetera, because in the pre-webhook, we haven't actually created the object yet, right? So we don't have that information for you. But in the post, you do. Post events are really good for creating bot interfaces because you're actually just interacting with that. You know which channel to respond to. So we've had a number of customers that build conversational AI interfaces using our webhooks. And also mirroring the events. If you want to just mirror some of that data in your own backend, that has a direct link back into our system via the SIDs that we send you in the post event, right? So a myriad of uses for this. If we dive in to what that might look like, you've got a user interacting with the system within the context and permissions and the capabilities you've built into the client, and then some backend that you've deployed that has the endpoint you've configured us to send webhooks to. So let's assume the user sends a message. Our system would send back the webhook event with all the context, who sent it, what channel, what service instance, et cetera, the message body, the date and time, and all that kind of good stuff. You can then decide to do something with the modification, so you send that back. So now we would process with the modification, say the message body changed, and that would actually go back to everyone in the message, in that channel that should receive that message with the modification. You can also notice that this could easily trigger another process, right? So maybe you wanted to have a record of that for compliance purposes. So your backend has all that context and all that knowledge in real time to go and make that, trigger that business process. Or in fact, potentially that's just a special push via notify, right? Or whatever it might be, right? Your backend has full control at that point and all the context it needs. Right, so I hope that helps. Just a few other things which we have, and this is not a deep dive into capabilities. But reachability indicator is something that is really a chat service connection presence. So on a user level, we will tell you in real time when a user has at least one endpoint physically connected on a WebSocket to that service instance or not, and also whether that user is registered for push on any device, right? And these we will do in real time. Customers have used that, for example, I go back to the customer support use case. Imagine you're talking to a customer the customer's on your website, and suddenly they just disappear. They close the web browser and they walk off. Your agent sits there going, well, is he still there? I don't know, right? So your agent or your backend can actually trigger and tap into that event and start a timer. So if you see a customer disappear, after a minute, you can tell the agent, looks like the customer's gone. Would you like to clean up this chat? Yes. And then it will go through the process of cleaning up, deleting, storing the transcript, et cetera. So fairly useful. We have message consumption horizon and read status. So this is basically where a particular user has read up to within a message list of a channel. So for example, let's say you send a very important message, and that triggers a timer on your backend via a webhook. After, say, 20 minutes, your timer wakes up and it goes back and says, which members in this channel has not read that message, right? Because we've got that information for you on demand. At that point, you might raise an SMS, send an email, do something else. There's a myriad of options that we've seen people use that for. And then the typing indicator is just baked in. It's a really good indicator. It's really easy to use to see when people are actually typing. Customer support, quite often you don't do it on both sides, but you only show when, say, the agent's typing, or it depends on what you want to do. OK. And really, that's what I had for you. There's a fair amount of documentation and core guides on the fundamentals of chat, the core concepts, the core data model, how to initialize the SDKs, et cetera. You can email help@twilio.com if you get stuck, and feel free to get hold of me. I don't really use Twitter too much, but I do have a Twitter account, so if you really want to, you can get hold of me there, but email me otherwise. And thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of Signal.
All right.